tested it,
Okay.
and we are streaming.
We're streaming now. Okay, great. So we'll start in on the agenda. Normally we start at the end with public hearings, but there are none. So we'll start at the beginning of the agenda. And in keeping with what we've been doing the last meeting or so, we will go over each item individually and have staff give a brief 2 or 3 sentence update on what each item is. There's some outstanding items, so the minutes, I believe, are outstanding. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that, probably not. And then, so we have, so October is a busy month for rules, so we're setting hearing on three sets of rules. The first set is, it's basically amendments to our toxic hotspots program, and we've been talking about this at committees quite a bit, including early and voluntary risk reduction options, new definitions for significant risk facilities. Not a new definition, but if you're a significant risk facility, you have additional requirements for early risk reduction, and then trying to shorten the timelines in the program, which have been, in the past, a point of criticism that it does take a long time to get risk reduction done and get these HRAs out. So I don't know if I want to go into details. These are just set hearings. Let me talk about all 3, and then I'll ask for questions. So the second one is setting hearing for the reclaim program. This is the shutdown provisions. We're in the middle of developing. We have rule language out. We've got comments. We're revising rule language. We have a working group next week, and that's progressing. And then the last one is pretty much a standard item that we do for just an update of our Reg 9 in this case, instead of usually Reg 9 and 10, but there's nothing to update in Reg 10. Reg 9 just updates the NSPS requirements at the federal level in our rule by reference. So any questions on the set hearings? We'll get into more detail obviously next month. I anticipate the reclaim will come back to stationary. I'm not sure the 1402 will, because it seems to have got past a lot of the controversy. It seems like we have pretty good consensus on that now, so I don't know whether we'll go back to stationary or not. Okay, moving on. There's no questions on that. Matt, you want to cover item 3?
Well, let me apologize in advance. I have like 7 items here. So we're being very busy. The first item is it's to improve our EVSE access here at the headquarters. You may recall we went out with an RFP. We selected not only the hardware vendor previously, but also the board approved the installation. Unfortunately, when we approved for the installation, that installer is no longer in the business of installing EVSE. And so we went to the second place finisher in that RFP selection process, which is Clean Fuel Connection. So we're just asking the board to approve us for a modest amount of additional funds to approve the installation with the Clean Fuel Connection. Any questions on that one? The next item is to execute contracts for hydrogen stations. So you may recall that we were awarded by the Energy Commission over $6 million to do hydrogen retrofits. One of the providers that we awarded to their station with the amount of funding that we would provide them couldn't make it a more retail-like experience, and so we're going to divert that fund to the Burbank station instead to make it a retail-like station. We're also bundling a couple other projects associated with hydrogen. There's one, Air Products had 2 stations that they couldn't come to terms with the station operators, and so we're moving those. And again, that's with the Energy Commission's concurrence. A station couldn't be done up in the Bay Area, so they're going to move it down here to Newport Beach, and we're going to help co-fund that station. And then finally, there's a couple other research projects associated with this, is looking at liquid hydrogen performance, as well as using renewable feedstock for hydrogen production. So those are the 2 research projects that are included in this board letter.
So how's the network of hydrogen stations working out? Kind of where are they? And
we can get you.
Where can you drive easily?
Yeah, there's a map that's on the Fuel Cell Partnership website. We showed it in committee, so it's probably on the presentation there as well. They've got about 20 some odd stations that are retail, and they've got 60 that have been awarded and are in progress. If you look at the essential geographic locations, this is really selected by the Energy Commission and the OEMs. We're looking at the same demographics for electric vehicles, plug-in vehicles, and so that kind of tends to favor the west side of the region, right? So I-5 and down by the coast. And then there's connector stations that would go out to, so there's one Riverside that would then go out to Palm Springs, and they're looking for ones that would go up the 15 toward Vegas. So that's kind of still in play. But, you know, I'm going to wing back here, but Wayne drives his Mirai almost everywhere. Right? So it's
They
kind of
have
like,
pretty good range, don't they?
yeah,
300 or something?
It's about 250. But it's like the old natural gas days where you actually have to plan your trip, right? But we're getting more coverage. The intent is to provide coverage and then capacity.
I got a question. How many vehicles are using that field now?
I don't know what the population is now. It's probably, you know, in the low hundreds to thousands. Toyota just told us in a meeting this week that they have just approved the production limit worldwide to go up from 10,000 to 30,000 vehicles. So they're seeing a lot of demand in Europe and in Japan. But we're hoping to get more vehicles here than other parts of the country.
A question about the BKI contract.
Uh-huh.
And from the report, it had looked like that they actually weren't doing the evaluation of liquid hydrogen behavior activities, that they were actually going to be the administrator of the funds. And so I was just wondering, is this something the district could actually do better?
Of course we could do it better, Mark. You know, BKI is administered, but the actual activity is going through Sandia National Lab.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we got to pick and choose our battles, right? So if they're willing to administer the contract, we'll let them do it, and you know, it would be staff time if we had to do it. And we're doing other things.
So it's just a better use of to give them 25,000 to administer it as opposed to us doing it.
In my personal view, yes.
Okay.
You know, it's not. This is to help fund the actual research, and some of that goes to them to administer. It's not to give BPI the whole amount
Okay.
for administration.
Okay. I had just read it that the 25,000 was actually going to be going specifically to them to administer it.
No, we're pitching in with many other stakeholders to actually fund the project.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're on number 5. So transfer funds and exit contracts for renewable natural gas production. So you may recall we funded, the board approved funding of a big project out in Paris to do digester to natural gas or renewable natural gas. This is kind of a similar project, although it's using a very unique feedstock. It's from biosolids. So they take the biosolid waste from the digester and they're going to turn it into renewable natural gas. The plant is being constructed out in Rialto, and we're asking support for $2.5 million to go to a total $25 million project.
Now, I have some concerns about this because unlike most of our board items that are dealing with projects, they list the partners. This one does not list the partners, and I have to assume that the reason it went from 1 million to 2.5 million, one of the partners dropped out.
So the partners, from what they tell us, is all private equity, so private investors have funded this. And when they approached us, we went to our typical co-funding partners, which was SoCalGas, the Energy Commission, CalRecycle, and so it turns out that SoCalGas is going to help with in-kind funding on the back end for injection in the pipeline, but not contributing funding up front to us. So. You know, it's one of the few projects we know. In fact, it's the only project that I know of that's going to take a biosolid and make a fuel.
But they've done this before, right?
They did a pilot project at LA Sanitation District to do a very small scale test or proof of concept, and this is actually going to be a production.
So this is not really a demonstration project. This is just a full In other words, I mean, we're putting money in, let me put it this way. The money that, the company, when they start producing, and they furnish the fuel, they're making money off of that, correct?
Purportedly.
Are we gonna get a chunk of that? Being that we were one of the, partners?
This is an age-old question that Dr. Burke brings up quite frequently, and so as the normal course, as we negotiate contracts, we ask them, once they become profitable or once they get to a certain point, are they willing to entertain putting back the investment that the public agency has provided them?
And my final question is this, because I was interested, I went online to look at stuff, and I found one person who was working for the company, who's now off looking for another job, and in his little email that he had on there, he suggested that they were brought in June of this year, and a number of the people were let go because they don't have the finances, and that they had trouble with their subcontractors who aren't getting. This makes me concerned about what type of company this is, and
So,
whether they are financially.
Yeah, we can look into that, and we have done business.
Can you look into their finances?
Sure, absolutely, but you also recognize that on these new kind of nascent technologies, there is a risk associated with it, and we never structure our contracts to pay up front. We pay on milestones. So as they deliver on their statement of work, that's when they will
Yeah,
get.
it's kind of a strange thing when you have a number of partners which are not revealed to us, and that what they're funding. They show the producers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope this is not something like the producers, where they're, but there's not
One
one.
is private equity, it's private investment. It's the remaining 25 million.
Okay.
But we'll look at that, staff will look at the email, it's online, and we'll look more into it. Did you?
Hey, Matt, I just have a question with regard to, and I'm familiar, it's not in a residential area, it's Rialto, and I understand where it's at. But do you have any concerns, with regard to, odors, from a project of this size? Or will it be completely contained? Because I know that those are some of our issues in Ellen County.
We'll check with LE sanitation, but my understanding is that there's very little odor from that
Okay,
dried char material, dried material.
okay, thank you.
Is this pipeline quality gas? And how much work does it need? It is going in
Yeah, that's
pipeline?
part of the whole cleanup process, right? So there's different stages. They've got the kind of their special digester, and it has to go through a syngas converter, then it goes into the compression for the RNG. And SoCalGas is working with them to do the pipeline injection. It's actually more tricky than you would think. Their first big project is out in Paris at the CRNR facility, so they'll have some experience. But that was part of our ask of SoCalGas, please work with them to do the injection part. So the intent is to put it in the pipeline, but at the very least, we will get RNG for vehicles.
Is there gonna be an EIR for this project?
I think they've already done that. It's on the City of Rialto website, so
Okay, so.
It has all its city approvals.
that's our understanding.
So any potential toxics or odors issues should
Be in that.
be in that.
Okay, number 6. This is to test and deploy low-cost sensors. So this is part of our SCAQMD program. In fact, EPA did a targeted solicitation and asked us to quote for testing of 10 of these pods or portable observation devices. It measures ozone, PM 2.5, temperature, and relative humidity. And since we already have the program established, we want to test these compared to our federal reference and federal equivalent monitors out in the field, and then we'll bring 3 of them back and test in the SCAQMD chamber as well. But it's doing a service for at the request of EPA, and they're paying for it. Any questions on 6? Number 7 is to recognize funds and execute contracts for in-use emissions testing. So you may recall that we did a big study with both CSERT, so UC Riverside, and West Virginia University to look at in-use duty cycles and emissions for trucks. That was on a more limited scale. This is actually going to to scale up to 200 trucks in total, looking at both 0.2 gram existing standard engine as well as a 0.02 gram engine. Mostly dredge trucks, but also transit buses and refuse haulers. We did an RFP and we're asking to approve staff to award a contract to both, again, CSERT and West Virginia University to conduct the testing.
And these are gonna be identical projects that both are gonna do, and the purpose of having them both is to compare the results.
Not specifically. What we did before is we kind of split. For example, we did diesel was with West Virginia Natural Gas or CSERT, just because of their expertise in either or. But so we have to look at who can procure the trucks and how they split their duty cycles. But there will be overlap, as you're suggesting, so we test the capability of both dynamometers.
And as in an Empire guy, if you ever get a chance to go to CSERT, it's worth the field trip.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to do that before the October board meeting, since it's out in the commission.
Oh, that's right, you're the missionary.
So there will be a tour this time. Number 8 is recognized transfer and appropriate funds fund RFP for the EFMP program. So this is otherwise known as Replace Your Ride. So it's been a very successful program to scrap and replace older vehicles with vouchers for, and the vouchers you get to actually plus up if it's a low greenhouse gas emitting vehicle and you're in a low income area. So this is simply to request ARB to release some more of those funds, $3.5 million for the base program and 10 for the plus up, which is the GHG component. We're also asking to release an RFP so we can have contractors do the case management, because you can imagine people are uploading all their documents and we just have to keep following up with them to make sure that they've got all the information, that they are looking for a vehicle, for example, and that they do it in a timely manner. So we have a pilot program that's ongoing. There's a waiting list of 1,400 or so on the waiting list, and this is just to continue that.
How many have we discovered?
How many does this cover, Dean?
How many vehicles is covered? Probably got 5,000.
And do we have distribution by county regarding, would that be available at the board meeting?
Yeah, we can make that available. Understanding too that this is all kind of in flux because, you know, in the legislature, they are going through, bringing bills through to appropriate those cap and trade revenues. So we're hopeful that two things. One is that they make the base program and the plus up equivalent on equity, because right now they're underfunding the base program and overfunding the plus up. So we hope that they fix that, and then also that they fix it and provide enough funding that can cover all the participants. Okay, number 9 is to execute an agreement for a supplemental environmental project. So the EPA has asked us to administer a project for putting air filters in schools in environmental justice communities. So they had a supplemental environmental project negotiation with Halliburton. They tried to originally do this up in the San Joaquin Valley. They couldn't come to terms with the air district or to do the project there. So since we've had so much experience with air filters, they've asked us to administer the project. So we're just recognizing the funds and then we'll work with EPA to identify the schools.
Is that mitigation money for something?
So apparently Halliburton did something. And we're saying, and so they're paying for that through a supplemental project, and we're helping them to make amends. And that concludes my portion.
Well done.
That was a lot for me. So I can take the next position. One of the organizational changes that Wayne put into place was taking the old compliance and engineering department and splitting that into 2. So this board letter does 2 things. One, it adds a deputy executive officer for the compliance and enforcement side, because we don't have that position at this point since we had one position over both of those functions. And so that would make that a better structure. The other is to add an assistant deputy executive officer position in finance, and that's going to help because Michael O'Kelly, our CFO, is now the chief administrative officer. He's overseeing finance, information management, and human resources. So this will give him an assistant deputy in that function that will help make sure that the financial aspects all get taken care of as well as they have been in the past. passed. So this is to seek approval to get those 2 positions added, which will help our operational efficiency.
Larry had asked to get kind of like a one-sheet org chart, simply showing
Okay.
who, you know, what the new structure is, because it's a little confusing at this point. And it doesn't regard to the reporting process, you know, it's
Okay.
first level.
Just the top level, the executive team. Okay, I'm sure we can do that. Thank you.
All right, next item, I'm not sure it's available yet, but it is worth talking about because we had a meeting last night.
Okay, so this is to, we had a meeting last night, and so that's why we're still refining the request for proposals. We're gonna bring this back to the board. This is to handle the $2.77 million that ExxonMobil paid, or the former ExxonMobil facility paid, in relation to the problems they had with the explosion in 2015, and then some excess emissions when they started up in May of this year. So we're gonna bring an RFP to the board, and the use of these funds is fairly flexible. It's not restricted to anything other than projects which would benefit the community, or actually it's benefit the residents of the district. The staff recommendation will be that we seek projects that will either be in or benefit the city of Torrance, since that's where this refinery is located. So we have drafted an RFP, and we had a meeting last night. I don't know the number of people that were there. It seemed like there were about 60 people participated. And we actually broke out into roundtable facilitated discussions and filled up an entire wall of whiteboard ideas with the papers and things. So we're going to structure the RFP. There's some themes that we've heard for better monitoring in and around the refinery and the community, better warning systems. So we'll probably get proposals for a siren system that would be, and maybe some more notification systems. And then the third basic category was outreach and education. So maybe some educational training for shelter in place. But last night, we heard an awful lot of other ideas from the community. So we're gonna try and structure the request for proposals so it will be as all-encompassing as possible. And then we'll bring that back to the board. We were targeting December. We've already had one request to give a longer time period for submitting the proposals. So we'll either come back in December
Is
or
the
shortly
focus
thereafter.
primarily going to be in the Torrance area?
That's what the staff is gonna recommend, that we do that. And then we also talked about the possibility that there's about $18 million available that ExxonMobil has paid for flaring, excess flaring over the past several years. So if we're oversubscribed and we get some good projects, we may go to the board and recommend that we fund some projects out of the Rule 1118 money. That actually has criteria that it needs to be mitigation. So we'll see what kind of projects we get, we'll evaluate them, and we'll bring back a recommendation to the board, either at the December meeting or shortly after if we decide to give a little bit more time for that. And one other thing we offered to do was to come back to the community after about 3 weeks, once the RFP is approved and released, and have sort of an office hours bidders conference. So similar to what the staff did for AB 1318, we'll have late afternoon to early evening hours where if anybody wants some technical assistance or has questions about their submittal, we'll be able to assist them with that. So that's what this item is. And so we have staff working today to just kind of fill in a couple of gaps in that request for proposals, and that should be coming out to you in the next day or two.
Any questions on that? Okay, the next item.
Good morning. This item is related to the RFP that the board approved to be released for an executive search and recruitment firm to identify a candidate for the permanent executive officer position. We received 4 proposals from names of recruitment firms that if you work with counties or cities, you see these firms throughout California. Myself, John Olvera, and Barbara Baird reviewed the proposals. And it was clear that CPS HR had the best overall proposal by a pretty wide margin. They've recently done recruitment for Mojave Desert AQMD's executive officer. They recently did the recruitment for the executive officer or equivalent position with LA Metro. So we've got a call in with them today, but the recommendation is to execute a contract with CPS HR Consulting for $22,000 for these services.
I nominate Ron and Mark to duke it out for the executive officer position.
That wasn't part of the recruitment plan. We'll see if we can work.
We can add that in, no problem.
It's like there was reason there.
Any other questions on that? Yeah, so, next item, Barbara.
Okay, because it's going to take several months for this executive search to go on, staff is recommending that the board extend the existing contract for acting executive officer Wayne Nastry through the date of February 3rd, 2017, which is the day of the board meeting in February, and is when the board is expected to be able to act on whatever recommendations they get from the search firm. And we've built in there time for that to be considered by the personnel committee as well, if they would like to. There's a mention of adjusting the retirement provisions, and John will correct me if I'm wrong. This adjustment would only go into effect if Mr. Nastry is ultimately selected as the permanent executive officer, but the district would reimburse or actually buy, I think, from the retirement system, the retirement benefits that he would have been entitled to had he not been a fixed-term employee. He's not entitled to retirement as long as he's a, quote, fixed-term employee, which he will be until February. Did I get that right, John?
Right.
Yeah, so I'll note just also on the closed session agenda, in case any of the board members want to discuss performance or anything like that in closed session, that is available to them, and they could recess to closed session to do that before they take action on this if they desire.
Any questions on 13? Seeing none. 14, which I believe is also outstanding, but Matt, do you have? He's not here. It's MSRC. Maybe if anyone has any questions on it. Again, this is kind of typical, comes to the full board to just approve the contracts that we implement on behalf of MSRC that makes these decisions. So if there's no questions on 14, we'll move on to 15. And I think that Barbara has said.
Well, actually, that was done under the prior regime of Mr. Olvera, so if you wanted to.
I think I still remember most of it. So 15 is an item to adopt amendments to the district's records retention policy and schedule. Periodically, we'll go back and review the policy and the schedule with each of the departments to see if there are any changes needed. And in this item, we're recommending some revisions to both the policy and the schedule, mostly to reflect updates in technology and in business processes of these departments.
How exciting was that one? Okay, so no questions on 15. 16 through 24 are the receive and file reports. Does anybody want to discuss any of those that seem to be pretty much standard, but anyone want to pull one of those for discussion?
Any changes in the roll forecast?
There's always changes in the roll forecast. So yeah, I didn't bring it with me, but if you look, it's part of the package, I believe.
Okay.
So let me know if you have any questions on that offline. So nothing through 24, and then this board calendar, and all the committee reports, and then the last item, unless somebody wanted to pull anything through 34. 35 is the staff presentation and board discussion. That's Matt also.
Naveen can do that.
Yeah, good morning. Just as a quick summary, in May of this year, we actually helped the Environmental Defense Fund with a innovator roundtable forum at the SCAQMD building. We coordinated with CDC, ARB as well on kind of defining the discussion, finding technology providers and so on. And very informal discussion that EDF wanted to put forward, having the technology providers and policy developers come in the same room, users to share their experiences about getting that technology out. Many of the attendees from the technology provider perspective were already part of our technology advancement office development, demonstration, and deployment projects. A lot of that technology is in various stages of commercialization, if you want to call it. The key takeaway really was that a lot of the technology is zero emission and low emission technology is already available for certain types of duty cycles, and how do we implement and cross the barriers that are still in place in terms of incentives and for not only the implementation of that technology, but also additional development for these companies. Give a little broader overview. That's kind of a quick snapshot.
That was really a tremendous session. You know, I was able to attend much of it. Are there any takeaways or action items that you're going to be doing out of that?
So the main takeaway was technology is ready, and the surprising takeaway was that it really would be very helpful for the technology providers and even some of the end users support that concept of actually having standards in place with implementation dates in place to get everybody in the same avenue that, look, this is a requirement that's coming up in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years. And that really helps a lot of the stakeholders as a whole to say, this is the schedule we need to meet. And that's what the main takeaway was from this. And, you know, if I can expand a little bit, we already do a lot of the technology work with them. We already provide a lot of the cost share to get this technology ready to be developed and deployed. We have a very strong incentive program and this program that we already provide a lot of the funding from different funds, and I can get into that if you'd like. But also, our board has already made the decision to work with EPA on establishing a national heavy containment standard. And that's kind of the message that this particular forum also has, that's really what it takes to get a little less uncertainty into the I don't know if I completely addressed your question.
Yeah, that's great, thanks.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to quickly ask, has there been any movement on the national NOx standard at all? I know that
The final rule came out on the phase 2, the GHG heavy duty truck standard, but the language includes, 7 to 10 pages or so on their intention to move forward quickly on an ultra low NOx standard. But it kind of reads, we intend to move very quickly to start the process to, kind of that wiggle room. So I think we still need to keep the pressure on to make sure the process moves forward quickly.
And we actually did receive recently a letter of support from the California Air Resources Board for that petition. And so that has gone to EPA as well. So that was very helpful.
And we got one as well from Sacramento Metropolitan SCAQMD. Right. So support letters still coming in.
I mean, it should continue to come in because it's not like that was the
Right.
end of the story.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Naveen?
I just get an update on SB 1387.
Yep, 1387 is on the floor the last 2 days. It got amended last week to include they took out the carb oversight on the reclaim. They took out the they added the ability for the three for the governor, Speaker of the Assembly, and President Pro Tem to appoint, when they make their appointments, if the bill passes, that they also accept applications and consider elected officials, city council members, and county board of supervisors. They also implemented a sunset date. They amended it to include a sunset date for the expansion of the board, and that sunset date is January 1, 2025. And then there was another item on there about the vehicles for members of the SCAQMD board who are eligible to receive a stipend from their governing board, from their respective governing board or governmental bodies for a car, that they not be allowed to use an SCAQMD car for more than 7 days within the 30-day period.
What does that mean? Actually, can they keep it parked in their garage?
You know, I think that's gonna be up to interpretation. I don't know how to interpret that.
21 days and then
Interpret that.
use it 7 days.
Probably not, because there wouldn't be any supervision over that.
So we would have.
Probably have to
record-keeping
actually
and
garage it
report
here.
to
Yeah.
the legislature on our vehicle use for the month of July. Okay.
So, it is on the, it was on the assembly floor, third reading this week. It got passed over twice, and this morning it got passed over again, but today it's eligible to come back to be heard on the assembly floor. So I'm actually literally looking at my phone, because I have staff members listening on to see if it's gonna be brought up again, today. So.
They also took away the requirement that those 3 members be a member of an EJ group.
Right.
Just needs to be a
Yeah.
resident in an EJ community.
Well, they have to either work or be associated with an environmental justice community. I'm sorry, yeah.
And reside in the environmental justice.
Yeah.
Now,
Was there any
it-
significance for the 2025 date? Other than
Yeah,
just
it's
random
arbitrary.
9 years from
Well,
now?
it's possibly gonna be our PM 2.5 attainment date if we go serious.
Yeah, that's what I,
I don't know.
What-
that's a
That
totally
year would
interesting day, so near there was attainment date.
On the vehicle thing here, I had 7 days out of 21 days.
30 days.
30 days, sorry. What prompted that? I mean,
It seems a little odd.
Don't know.
it seems a little,
Dennis knows, because Dennis may know, but.
Little-
But he's not talking.
Not talking about
Call me.
I don't know.
You're gonna have a bunch of calls.
you know, I mean, my board member uses it to drive to his meetings here. And now he's gonna have to garage his vehicle here.
Well, he can drive here, but.
Well, that's only if the city provides him a
Yeah.
car, in which case he'll have to drive his city car.
Well, the
So-
way I read
so-
it, if they
or
provide
an
or it's got
allowance.
eligible for reimbursement.
Okay,
I think that means any elected official's not gonna be eligible for an AQMD card for more than 7 days, the way I read it.
Well, if
Yeah,
their
what-
respective
Well, if their
governing
city
bodies
provides them,
provides that, yeah.
yeah.
Provides
But
a
if they
reimbursement.
If they don't, then it
The
doesn't
opportunity
apply.
to be reimbursed.
I think they will just
I
run
think
their
getting
local
mileage is
older
not the same
garage
as
that
having
are-
a car allowance.
I just-
I have a question in regard to EJ community. Is there a list of EJ communities and what is an EJ community?
The language is the same that was used in the CARB bill, so Garrett, do you know how they interpreted that?
Coronavirus.
Common virus community.
So I don't know what those are.
For
There
instance,
are-
it's pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah.
It's a map that, and they have all these criteria for pollution and income and all that stuff.
I mean, for instance, there's a pet peeve of mine. People who live in the inland empire, and along the foothills from Glendora all the way over, plus Santa Clarita, I consider it an EJ community because they are grossly impacted more than other residents in the South Coast District, but that wouldn't be true, right?
It
I
depends.
don't know
Even though
what
they
the
are really
ordinance
impacted.
says about that.
The tool, does the best it can. It's supposed to be a screening tool, not necessarily defined. That's why it's called screen, not a definition tool, but it is being used that way. And there's no perfect tool. But this is what the state, Cal EPA came up with and the legislature's been pointing to in recent legislation. So my guess is they would use that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send you a link, Ron, to
Yeah,
the
I'd like to
calendar
have it.
screen so you can take a look.
It's pretty cool. It's.
Yeah, but there's, I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's communities on there that personally, I don't think are environmental justice communities, but because of one thing or another, they're considered environmental justice community. Like, I'll give you an example. I live in Chino Hills. I don't know what.
Are you an EJ community?
I'm an EJ community according to Calendar Street, which is kind of
Rich folks
interesting.
down there.
Well, I don't know about rich, but it's, maybe it's a common manure. I don't know what's common to be an environmental justice community, but.
It's just you, Derek.
It's just me. I'm the problem.
Or Calhoun.
Yeah, if you would send that.
So we've kind of moved on to other business. There's one other item on the agenda, but it relates to something that was already on there, number 36, but that's just if closed session discusses the
If the board members don't just vote on the contract that's in the open session agenda, and they go into closed session and do something different, they have to come back and do that, take action in open session.
I've got one question on other business.
Yeah.
Several meetings ago, you had indicated that staff had already started the analysis on TVAC and should be done by midsummer. So we're past midsummer, and how's that analysis? Has the analysis been completed?
Not quite completed, but we're close.
Okay.
I met with staff last week, so we think within another week or two. But we are going to come back to a stationary source committee with that. That's
Okay.
ready, and we're going to workshop it before that too. So there's still going to be a public process involved, but we're pretty close.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other business?
So on closed session, we do have a settlement proposal on the Moreno Valley World Logistics Center, which we'll be providing to the board members and discussing in closed session. We received that from the developer.
Okay. Any other items, other business from the committee members, public comment? Seeing none, I guess we'll adjourn. See everyone next month.